Well, I'm really thrilled because we've had such an incredible demand for interviewing flower farmers that are more northern. So, welcome, Janice, to the Flower Podcast.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
So, let's tell everybody where you're located.
So I'm in St. Thomas, Ontario, which is in southwestern Ontario in Canada.
So, how much snow do you have on the ground right now?
We have about 8 inches, I think, but it's been a pretty mild winter, so we're just kind of getting like a polar vortex. And I was hoping that we were going to skip it, which would have been really nice, but of course we get like a dumping. And this week I learned how to drive our new snow blower on the back of the tractor. I'm not going to let my husband know I know how to do it, but I know how to snow blow the lame way now.
I love that. I love that. Well, hopefully, we'll see when this airs on the other side of things, so that way you don't get in trouble with that.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting because as we're recording this, much of the country has snow and ice in many parts that aren't used to it, like in Texas and places like that.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping maybe we have some advice for them at some point in this episode because I know it's got to be scary for them because down there they're not really prepared for a few
No.
inches of snow. So, but
And
I
I mean,
also
we've been caught with it too. Like we had, I think it was probably about 8 or 9 years ago, we had two hoop houses collapse one night because of snow load. So we definitely know about that kind of stuff.
oh wow, that's frustrating. So, all right, well, before we get into more meat, which I'm really excited about, um, I want to hear your story. How did you end up being a flower farmer?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and like many farm kids, I think I never thought I would be a farmer at all. Like I was like, how am I going to get out of farm? How am I going to get off the farm? Like I grew up working so hard with my parents, helping them. I need to do something different. So I went to college and I got licensed as an optician. And so I worked in the optical field for about 15 years. I was a licensed optician.
Wow,
So yeah, totally not flowers at all.
I guess you didn't see
Um,
that coming.
no, yeah. No, yeah, that's a good one.
Well, we're gonna have a lot of eyesight
Yeah,
puns today. That's my
yeah,
goal. Anyway, sorry about that.
that's okay. So yeah, I went to school. I was an optician, and I worked as a manager for a few chains. I worked at optometrist office and that. And then I met my husband, well, boyfriend at the time, and he was from a farm. And I think I had to like prove that I still had some country girl in me. So I was working full time, but I wanted to do something still on the farm. I was still living at home, and I thought, okay, I can do something to prove that I'm like a country girl. So that year, my mom and dad were still at the farmers market in our town in St. Thomas, and I thought, okay, I'll grow something, some kind of flowers. So I bought 3,000 gladioli bulbs, and I
Not one or two,
started
but three
started small.
thousand. You just bought three
Yeah.
thousand gladiola bulbs. Okay.
Yeah, so I had mom and dad let me use a spot in the field, and I grew them. And my husband Mark, I had him come down. Like we were a long distance relationship, so he came down and helped me when he came down on the weekends to grow these flowers, and then we sold them at the market in town beside my parents' vegetable stand. And yeah, I got hooked that year, and then the next year I thought, okay, what am I going to add in? And every year I just kind of added something in along the way. So yeah, that's how I got into actual flower farming. But growing up as a farm kid and um, growing up in the country, so
Wow, I love that. So let me ask this question. So what was it like when you're in that market? First of all, you've planted your gladiolas, you've harvested your gladiolas, you're at market with them. So you've put all the sweat equity into this crop
hmm.
and you're at the market. Was there something at the market? Just I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. Why were you hooked at that point?
I think it was just that people were so like excited about. There hadn't been a flower farm at our market for a long time. The Amish would always bring some flowers with their vegetables and that, but to have a whole stand of just flowers, which is so cool for everybody. And that's what we always like. Our table is predominantly flowers. Like that's what we sell. We don't have other things. Flowers isn't a side thing for us. Flowers is the main thing for us.
Is the main thing. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I feel like okay, so I guess Mark got on board with this. He was
Yeah.
excited about it. Or
Yeah.
did he realize, oh my gosh, I've created this monster now. I don't know what's going on. So
I don't know. He's hung around, so I guess it's okay.
I love that. I love that. So you were farming on your parents' farm.
Mhm.
How long did that last?
It was a couple of years of farming, well, probably 5 years, I guess, farming there. And then my grandpa had passed, and my grandma was still living at the home farm, which is just one road south of my parents' farm. So it's really close
Oh
together.
wow. Okay.
So my grandpa had dairy cows, and so it was a cash crop farm. And grandma just got tired of cutting so much grass. So I said, okay, grandma, I'll work up this little spot over here. And she was okay with it because she loved flowers. I mean, the two of them would go around to their fun afternoon thing was go to garden centers and find things. And each year they would pick a different kind of flower, and that would be what they collected that year. So, like one year they collected lilacs. So they went around and visited everywhere they could to get as many varieties of lilacs as they could. And Grandpa was really into lilies and irises and that kind of stuff. So their gardens were like main thing around here. And then I wanted to just start growing a little bit more. And once Mark and I were married and we had our first son, then Grandma was ready to move into town. So we immediately said like we want to buy it. And so went through all that, which buying from family is interesting. And like it's funny what happens when you buy property in family and in a large family. So I mean that's all good. We all wanted to keep Grandpa's farm in the family kind of thing. So now I mean we've revitalized the farm to more than what it was before, because
Wow.
it was just cash crop for a number of years. And now like we use all of the buildings, and it's still he's still very much part of our farm and still around here. And it's um a different growing and different kind of farm, but still in our family.
That's
So
great. I
so yeah,
never
so
thought
we
about that dynamic with family. And I mean, I come from a big-ish family. And my uncle has my grandparents' farm, which he acquired from them a long time ago now. I just think, it's interesting because, not everybody is interested in that. But I think everyone's glad to keep things in the family if that's possible. So,
mhm,
yeah, I'm sure there was a little bit of politics maybe, but I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, I'm glad. That's so exciting that you've been able to revitalize that to even more than it was before, especially focused on flowers and
Mhm,
blooms. So, well, tell us a little bit about your business.
yeah.
Like, okay, so how big is this property? And then
Yeah.
I think you mentioned some collapsing greenhouses. So yeah, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So our farm is 10 acres in total. We grow about 4 acres of flowers here on our farm. And then mom and dad's farm, like I said, is just one road north of us. So they have the infrastructure from the vegetables. So I'm lucky that, I mean, not all farmers and so many don't get to come in and already have infrastructure of greenhouses and coolers and that kind of stuff at
Right.
their disposal. So I'm really lucky that I have that. We grow about an acre at mom and dad's, I would say, and then 4 acres here. We, since we moved to our farm, we've built two hoop houses here. They're unheated hoop houses. The one is a really tiny one, but it was my first kind of start
Mhm.
at them. And then the other one is, I think it's like 26 by 70 something. So it's a good size one. And then at mom and dad's, there's two heated spaces that we use for propagation. So all of our seed starting and that happens over there. Mom does a lot of my seed starting. So even though she's retiring from vegetables. She's doing a lot with flowers and starting all of that for me. And then there are two other unheated greenhouse spaces there. We also have, we built a cooler, a walk-in cooler and workshop space at our farm. So we
Oh,
have
wow.
the, well, and until we built it on, we did about 3 years of having the cooler at mom and dad's because they have one from the vegetables. And every night we would pick the sunflowers and then we'd have to load them up in the van, take them over to their place and go back and forth all the time. So then we decided we had to build a cooler at our farm. So we built that, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now, since we've had the cooler here at our farm. So now we're getting the infrastructure set up here as well as over there to have kind of double the space.
Wow, wow. So now you mentioned that your parents were retiring from vegetable production. Uh,
Well, I don't know. I don't think farmers ever really retire,
well,
but
thank you for saying that because I kind of felt that way, and I was curious, how does that work?
yeah, so they, I mean, they're just slowing down. Like they had very successful vegetable business. They sold at markets, they sold to wholesale, they have meat chickens and beef and all that kind of stuff. So they really were a really big in the area, and now just slowing down because there's been a few younger farms come up in the area, and mom just wants to grow what she likes to grow and what she enjoys growing. So she still definitely grows things, broccoli, cauliflower, and like lots of peppers and paste tomatoes and things that she likes to grow now. And
Sure.
they still have the laying hens that are their main um like income now, that they sell the eggs from them all, like every day.
Wow. And so, how many acres do they have?
Their farm is 100 acres. They probably grow, I would say 8 to 10 acres of vegetables at their farm.
That is a lot of vegetables.
Yeah.
Well, I can see now that you are never going to escape this. I don't think you can try, but I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's in your blood, and I'm sure your mom has got to be so excited to be doing something different, being involved in seed production for helping you. It's
I
well,
think
number
that's her
one,
favorite part, is learning
yeah,
how to grow new things. Like she's now, when she seeds a Lysianthus, like she's excited and does all those, or figuring out our seeding schedule for different things, and like learning how to do seeding schedule for flowers is much different than seeding for vegetables, like timing, and like then figuring out that we have to have this color for this wedding or whatever, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely different than vegetables.
well, you just mentioned two things that now I want to make sure we cover. One, so you do weddings also
Yes, we do.
in
Yeah,
your spare time, or is that like you do a lot of them?
we do. I mean, last year we had 57 weddings booked for the year. We only,
Wow.
because of COVID, only did about 30 of them. But yeah, no, I know, only 30.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry I'm laughing because I know there's people that wish they had 30. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. Okay, so gosh, you're just uncovering more topics for us to talk about as we do this. Okay, so go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do lots of weddings, like, and some of them are like just bouquet only. Some of them are centerpieces and like arbors and all that kind of stuff. But we're growing predominantly like the flowers for the wedding, and we do order in any, as much local, like as in Ontario as we can, to supplement anything else we need for the weddings.
Wow, great. So I just want to go down this short path here. 30 weddings with COVID. Were most of them pickups or were most, I mean, did you
Um,
have some installations or
So
how
we
did
still
that
had
work?
installations. It just, a lot of them went like down in size for sure. So that was a challenge. I mean, we, at the beginning of the year, I remember in March thinking, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to totally lose my shirt. Like this is going to be like crazy." I had like 20 something thousand tulips ready to be blooming within like a month, and COVID hit, and we were locked down and all that kind of stuff. And so I was really worried, definitely stressed out. But turn that around by contacting other flower farmers in Ontario. A lot of them sold to the flower auction in Toronto, and
Oh,
they
okay.
normally would be sending them there and sending thousands and thousands of stems there. Not that I was gonna totally like fund the flower industry, but I was able to get a whole bunch of them and make up little bouquets and send them out and deliver them around to our area. So our tulips didn't get wasted. Like they were in crazy demand. And I mean, that demand has continued to go since the pandemic started. I thought we were going to be in big trouble, but it's actually been awesome. Like it's crazy how many flowers we've been selling. And the wedding flowers, like I tease that our market customers and our like super like grocery store customers were getting like totally like flower snobs because they were getting like ranunculus and they were getting dahlias and they were getting like awesome wedding flowers in their market bouquets. So I definitely think we got some new flower lovers in our area.
Well, and it must be hard to go back to the other kind of bouquets after that happens. And so people are going to be really excited when you're back up and running for that again, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's definitely demand. And with that, I mean, this is another little aside, but with that, because we had demand all last year and into the fall, this spring we're building a 30 by 96 heated greenhouse. So we will hopefully have production from early March until December next year.
Wow. I mean, right now it's the middle of February, a little past, and
Yeah.
so is it up and running already, or
No,
is
we're just in the permits and the like
oh
we've built
okay.
like we've ordered it. It's being made, but it will be built in May, and then we will extend our Lisianthus and Dahlia season this fall, and then start early spring with cool flowers
Oh,
and
for next
ranunculus.
year.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
yeah.
misunderstood. All right,
That's
that's really going to be a game changer for you, won't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because it's been hard all winter, people calling. 'Cause of course, like in the fall, they had this competition in our town of like the favorite florist and that. So it was like a voting thing. And we won that, which was amazing. Like to think a flower farm won the favorite florist in our town. And the day after it aired, we got like our major frost and we didn't have any more flowers. So
Oh my
I was like,
gosh.
great, the favorite florist doesn't have any flowers. But
I'm sorry to hear that. That had to be really frustrating. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, people have been really understanding about it because they explain when they call and ask to order something. I explain to them like we're a seasonal farm and we're growing what we do. So, I still like definitely refer them to other people in town, but I'm excited to when we can fill that.
I'm sure. Okay, so you've kind of tiptoed on this. So you've done weddings. You do farmers markets. We already talked about
Yeah.
that a little bit. You just mentioned grocery stores.
hmm
So, how many grocery stores do you service?
Well, they're small, one is a small grocery store in town, and then two others are like farm stand markets that are like fruit and vegetable markets. So those, I wouldn't say like they're big grocery store, but they're like small independent stores in the area. So the one in town I'm going to start selling pussy willow soon there, and then the other one's open kind of like May, and we'll start selling there until October. So we
Wow,
do those ones as well.
sure. Okay, great. Well, do you also do CSAs?
We have a subscription. So we have people that have paid for flowers ahead of time. They get one bouquet a month for 6 months of the year, and that that has been crazy too. We posted it in November, and of course I put it out to my previous subscribers first, and they bought most of what I was planning to sell of them anyways. I put it up on one day, and they were gone within hours, and so yeah, we have 100 subscriptions. So those go 3 weeks of the month. So people are in week 1, week 2, or week 3, and then so we can do about 30 something a week in those. So that's about 100 that way. But yeah, so we do those as well, May to October.
Well, that's pretty impressive. I know one thing I kind of want to go back to because I get questions about this from time to time. Um, you're talking about sort of planning some of these things. I think we were when we were talking about your mom doing some seed
hmm
starting. Um, I know that that has to be one of the bigger challenges because your growing season is shorter. But with the high tunnels, is it what exactly is your season? You may have said it already,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure.
Um, well, I think we're about like zone 6A, and it's definitely been milder until this week, with the weather. But we are usually picking tulips in the tunnels in late March. So we're picking late March, early April. We start picking the tulips, and then through April, there's like the daffodils and all the things outside start then. And we usually go until mid-October with the dahlias, and then we'll have a killing frost in mid-October.
Mm. Well, by then you're going to have that heated tunnel, and
I know, yeah.
you may even get a few more weeks in there then.
For sure, yeah, I'm hoping so.
Yeah. So then as far as that goes, like planting actually in the field, I would think that the ground, even though 6A doesn't sound that bad, I think when can you actually start getting in the digging in the dirt?
Yeah, we're usually planting in April. I mean, Canada, people always think like igloos and we're like freezing cold and that we're like the Arctic or
Frozen
whatever.
tundra. Yeah, I know.
But no, we're a mild part of Canada. There's definitely colder, and I totally my hats off to anyone that's growing in northern Alberta and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's when they get a frost in August. I can't even understand how they do that. So it's amazing that they work so hard for such a short time. So we're really lucky that we are pretty warm. Like we have, I think, a lot of lake effect because we are only about 20 minutes from Lake Erie, so we're not too
Mm,
far that way. And so we're warm that way, a warm part of the province.
sure. Well, so for example, when you go to plan, do you obviously plant successions with many of your crops,
Yep,
or how many? Like, I don't know. We get a lot of questions sometimes about how do people plan that? How do you plan that, especially if you're thinking of bouquets and things like that?
sure. Well, we're planting like sunflowers. We start seeding those in like early April, and we do about 1,000 sunflowers every 10 days. And those is just we set it out. We're really lucky. We have a transplanter, so we plant all of our sunflowers by plant and plug. So that's really quick and easy planting. So we do those all the time. That's all scheduled. We plant lilies in crates, and we do those I think about 300 every 2 weeks, so that we have the constant supply because every one of our market bouquets gets a lily in it.
Mm.
So we had to plan that way.
And how long
Um,
does it take to grow lilies in crates up there?
um, they're probably 2 months, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, not too bad. We get all the bulbs in, they're frozen when we get them, and then we divide them because one thing about Canada and our supply chain is like I know with some of the bulb companies in the States, like Edney and different ones like that, they will send you every 2 weeks. You say, I want 300 lilies or whatever, and they send you that. There isn't the infrastructure, it seems, in Canada to do that. They either
Mm,
want you to buy like pallets of them at a time. So luckily one of them does work with us and they're not too far away, about 45-minute drive, and we go and pick them up. So then they're still frozen when we get home. They're just frozen enough that we can like get them apart, and right away we divide them up and then figure out in how many we want at a time, and then we will put them back into like a modified freezer that keeps them chilled and cold until we're ready to plant them.
okay, so is it okay? I'm just gonna ask a clarifying question. Are they
Sure.
really frozen? Or are they just really
Yeah.
cold?
No, they're frozen.
They're frozen.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would think when you go to plant them out that and this is me, I mean, I've planted bulbs before, but I've never gotten them at that stage.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this a little bit. So then how many, so they have to, so they're pre-cooled, so you don't have to worry about that at all. You
Right.
warm them up when you're ready to say go, and then they go.
Yeah. So they come in the bulb crate frozen in the like a potting medium. And then they're frozen. By the time we get home, they're still cold and frozen enough to get them apart. And then we divide them up. And then Dad has modified a freezer so that it because they don't want to be like a deep freeze. It's not like a deep freezer. They're just
Mhm.
frozen. So Dad's modified that a freezer will. He's got it on a thermostat, so it just freezes enough, and it like turns on and off all the time to keep them frozen until we're ready to plant them. And then we plant them, and then they think it's spring. It's like they've been in winter the whole time, except right away it's July.
Incredible. Well, okay, so you plant lilies, you plant sunflowers. What else is
Yeah.
part of your spring bouquet?
Okay. Well, spring bouquet definitely the tulips, daffodils. We do hyacinths in crates. They're going right now. They'll as soon as I take them out into the greenhouse, they'll be getting going. What else? We
Yeah, I
don't.
misspoke because we were talking about more early
Yeah.
summer flowers, and I said spring.
Yeah. No, that's
So
okay.
sorry about that. So so with your sunflowers and lilies, what else do you
Mhm.
plant for that?
The zinnias go in there, and we plant a few successions of zinnias. Once they get going, they just kind of get pumping out flowers. So the the successions kind of run into each other, and then we just have tons of zinnias. And
So how many of those do you plant? Like zinnia
zi-
successions, like
zinnias,
three
oh,
or more than that?
successions probably two for sure.
Okay.
Sometimes they maybe three. Oh well, yeah, we had a really early one that we had in a tunnel, so I would say three successions of zinnias that we do. And then also like celosia, we planted a ton of celosia, and we had so much of it that it was great. We just kind of made successions of it just by cutting it really hard, and we'd cut a row really hard and then go on to the next row kind of. So celosia is an awesome one for our summer bouquets. And then the dahlias, once they get going, we had about an acre of dahlias last year, and we get cutting on them. They're really great for the fall, and yeah.
Hmm. Well, I feel like um, with that much land that you cover, is there any favorite for you that you plant that you really
Mm.
look forward to that maybe is different than maybe some of the other things? Or
Oh, that's always so hard. Like, what's the favorite flower?
I know.
It's like it depends. Like, what color is it? What are you pairing it with? What season is it to decide favorite color or favorite flower? Um, Yeah, the Lysianthus is pretty awesome. We grow a lot of that. I really love them. And it's so funny thinking back, like when we first got them, we would order plugs, and I think we ordered like 100 of them because it was like they're expensive and I don't know, I've never grown them. So then it was, I forget how many years ago, but there was a greenhouse in Ontario and they had a big fire, and they burnt down. But they had all the Lysianthus because they were like a commercial grower of Lysianthus. So Ball Seeds put on like this fire sale, and it was like they had all of these Lysianthus that they didn't have anywhere to go to. So you had to buy, I think it was like 5 trays of them. So we went from like 100 of them to like 1,900 of them. And once that happened, it was like that next year was like, yep, we need that many every year. Like we need to have a
Wow.
ton of them. So that really pushed me into growing more of them because they're really awesome. So Lysianthus is awesome. Dahlias are awesome. I don't know. It's really hard to say what a favorite would
Well,
be.
I know that can be a challenge. Anything new that you're planting this year that, or you're planning on planting this year that you're excited about?
um, I'm trying to think what. Um, I guess different, more slow. There's some more celosia that we got this year. What other things? It's just like I just get excited about growing everything. Like I don't know.
That's okay. That's good.
Mm.
Well, I mean, especially when you have, a long-ish winter and you've got snow on the ground. I mean, I think anybody's
Mm.
just excited for the sunshine and getting out and getting things rolling again. I know
Yeah.
that's for sure. I know that one crop that I know that we've discussed briefly that I feel like um, you've you've got sort of I don't know how to put this, but that you've got under control is ranunculus. I would love it if you could kind of go dig deep, no pun intended,
Yeah.
on maybe some good strategy for ranunculus, because I'm sure I feel like that's a flower that is being grown more and more and more, and new people might not know what to do, but then also established growers might appreciate some tips and tricks, especially in light of all the snow and ice that a lot of our country's seeing. So,
Right. Well, I
um,
think, and
yeah,
like, I think, like, I'm not pro at growing ranunculus, but I figured it out for our area. And the
okay,
way I figured it out was rotting a lot of them. Like, it was like years of like, I guess I would read things from other growers and other places and try and adapt how they were growing it to my area without thinking, this is Ontario, this is Canada. I can't do the same as what they do in the West Coast. I can't do the same as what they do in Texas. So even when like it bothers me when I see them in a garden center and I see the corms for sale and it's like a fall bulb and they say you plant it this deep and you do this and it's like, no, that's not how they work here. You can't do that. So why are garden centers selling them for the home gardener to just fail? Like that's
it
what
drives
bothers.
me crazy. Yeah, that drives me crazy.
Yeah, so I think after years of rotting them, and I think Dave Dowling was the one who finally like got into my head because I was at an ASCFG thing in February, and I was like, Dave, I'm getting mold on them again. What's going on? I can't lose these guys again for like the third year of like trying to do this. And he's like, you got to think of it like, don't water them. They need to be dry. And I was like, but it's a plant, they need water, I have to do it. And just thinking how they wanted to be and not trying to make it how I think it should be. I have to think how the plant wants. So we have to pre-sprout and start the soak and pre-sprout ranunculus here. We don't plant them outside in the fall in my area. We can't, they'll freeze. Aside from a few of them that have like come up on their own, which are drive me nuts because that's like not the rule. So don't look at that, but they do sometimes overwinter in certain spots. So they we need to mimic what they want in the fall rains that they would get in their native, like they would get a wet fall, which would soak them. And then it would be kind of a dry time of not a lot of water. And then they would grow and start going in the cool and then spring would come. So I had to think about it. How does the plant think and how can I adapt our area to what the plant wants? So that's, I think, how I've cracked it is just figuring it out to do what it wants. We pre-sprout them and then they go into our unheated greenhouse in like mid-March. They still need to be covered. We still need to protect them and that. And then they start going into the spring. So we just have to give them the right climate that they want.
So I'm curious how I just kind of want to go a little deeper here. Like when you're soaking them to pre-sprout them,
Mhm.
do you have a contraption you set up? Do you have a way
Um,
you do that?
Yeah, so what we do, and I'm actually gonna do it later this afternoon, so it's like fresh in my mind. So I just have like a big laundry tub in our garage. I fill that up with water, and then we have a aquarium bubbler, and that gets put in there. I put them in onion bags, so they're all contained in that water, and then they get bubbled in water for 4 hours, and then after that, I have a whole bunch of like flat open trays, just plastic trays. I put a little bit of soil and dry soil in the bottom of it and like less than an inch of soil. And then I just put them all in there lined up and a little bit of soil on top of them. And then they go into our cooler, which we're heating right now to make it
Mm.
warm enough for them to want to have their spring and sprouting.
So do you cover them very deep in the tray, or do they just barely
Not
cover?
very much, just so they're covered over.
Mm. And then how long does it take them at that stage since you've
Uh,
pre-soaked
Usually
them
about
to
2 weeks.
sprout? 2 weeks,
2 weeks,
that
yeah.
quick. Okay.
We have it at we put the cooler to like 10 to 12 degrees, which I think is like 50 something degrees. And so it's warm in there and then they get sprouting. They don't get watered. I have to totally resist watering, which I to do all the time and just leaving them and forgetting them. That's what Dave told me the one time. He's like, don't look at them. So it was perfect that when he told me not to touch them, I was away at one of the ASCFG board meetings. So even though I can't go this year because of COVID,
Right.
we have a virtual meeting. That's what I have to remember. I'm like, okay, now I go away for like 4 or 5 days and don't touch them. So that's what I have to do this year too.
And
Um,
then Do you plant them? I know I've seen some people experimenting with planting them in crates, or do you plant them straight in the
we
greenhouse?
we plant them right in the ground in the greenhouse. And with the new greenhouse that's coming, I'll plan to plant them right into the ground. Last year we had a little bit. I think with the crates, a lot of people are trying to be able to move them to a cooler spot later on, because once they get hot, then
Mm,
they drop off production. So last year we got a really warm spell in like late May, early June. It got like really, really hot, so we took some shade cloth. We had a big, huge piece of shade cloth that mom and dad had used years ago, and we covered the greenhouse with that shade cloth, just to bring that temperature and the light intensity down a bit on them. And that seemed to, I mean, it didn't prolong them for like months longer, but we got like probably a couple weeks longer out of them instead of them shutting down because it was too hot.
that's pretty cool. Well, all right. Well, that's good. I mean, and then when you get them in the ground, roughly how long does it usually take for you to start getting blooms? Because
We're
your day
usually
length is
getting,
also shorter at this point than is down here too. So that's why I'm asking.
yeah. Yeah, we usually are getting blooms by mid-May. I would say Mother's Day, we're getting blooms on them. So a couple months.
Yeah. Okay. Um, when do you think does that season end? Because I know I have friends in Montana that they'll almost go through July.
Yeah, no, ours like it's like probably June.
Okay.
They're done. So we get like a month out of them. So they're definitely not our most like volume crop. They're definitely not our most like, yeah, our most profitable or most income from, but people are learning about them, and it's so funny when people are, I want those run and rainer thing, like it's like they're ranunculus, those ridiculous or whatever flowers they call them.
Hmm.
So
Redunculus. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, that's how I think I remember I posted something saying that we were taking bouquets to the local grocery store, and they're like, there's ranunculus at the grocery store, what? And people were like crazy to go and get them.
That's so funny. Well, you mentioned this earlier, so I'm going to change subjects just here a little bit.
Okay.
Um, ASCFG, the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. I know that just from our phone conversation that we had last year, I didn't realize they had a separate branch for Canada now, and you're the director of
Yeah.
that. So you're like you're the big wig there. So I'm kind of curious, how does that work? And are you still kind of really connected, but then you're just trying to really focus on meeting the needs of uh, the Canadian growers, or tell us
Yeah.
about it.
Well, it was so I'm the first of the Canadian directors. So it was I'm in my second term of that. So I think it was 2000 and, well, it was 4 years ago actually. They decided that we needed to add a Canadian director to the list of directors. There was getting to be more and more Canadian members joining, and we just wanted to have a voice and a way to, because we are different, and we have a different perspective and different challenges that we deal with. So it was just, we needed to have that representation within the association, and I think that's even propelled the association to be even more worldwide, and having growers all over the world now. So yeah, this is my second term as a Canadian director, and I have, like I said, the whole country to represent, but we really focus on just like getting more awareness of Canadian grown and getting more Canadian flower farmers. Um, if my members are contacting me asking me about how to grow something or how to do something, then if they're in BC, I would definitely like tell them to look at what people in Oregon do and that kind of stuff. So still like stay within your growing region, but at least have the representation of a different nationality in the association too.
No, that makes perfect sense because, I mean, Canada, like the U.S., there's all these different microclimates and different parts of the country, and
Hmm.
one of the things I would love to kind of find out is, um, what do you see as the benefits of being a member of ASCFG?
Yeah, well, definitely like just having that leg up of information. Like this is my 13th year growing, but like I could have like learned things long ago that I didn't have to like learn the hard way, learn myself.
Mm.
I wouldn't have probably rotted all those ranunculus if I would have like looked into it further, and all the knowledge and the just the willingness to give and the willingness to teach in the association. Like there's just so many people that want to help and want to tell you how they do things to help you not make the mistakes that they have made to get there. And when people ask me things, I'm willing to tell them, okay, yeah, I rotted a bunch of ranunculus, but now I know how to do it, and this is how I do it. So I think it's just the knowledge and the group of people. Like unfortunately because of COVID we can't be together, but it's so much fun to go and be in a room with so many other flower nerds and people who will talk about flowers for hours into the wee hours of the morning and that kind of stuff, and are just really excited about growing and excited about doing what they do.
Well, the one thing I really love about what you just said is, so many times people feel like they're the only ones that have ever rotted a ranunculus, or why does this always happen to me, or why, or whatever, they tell themselves in their mind. And
Hmm.
I think it's just really great to know that, okay, you're not the first person, you're not the last person, and this is a really common struggle, and that's just part of figuring it out. And this is one of the benefits
Yeah.
of being part of an organization like that, or like in this case, listening to a podcast, because you can learn that other people have had the same struggles, and how did they solve that problem.
Hmm.
Um, and a thing I really find so encouraging about this organization is I can't tell you how many times I've had emails or DMs or things, and people talking about how they love the podcast because, sometimes they feel all alone.
Hmm.
But really being a part of an organization like this is another way, like you said, to connect with other flower nerds, plant nerds, geeks, whatever you want to call them. Basically, we'll just say other flower friends.
Yeah.
And because there's something that everybody has in common, and everybody, is so gracious about sharing information and
Hmm.
things that they wish they had done better. And I don't have it here. I lifted up for their YouTube, but I just received my copy of the Cut Flower Quarterly, and it has great articles in it. It has great tips. It has where people have like done different sort of trials and things like that.
Hmm.
It's just a great resource. And then
Yeah.
then all the friends you meet as a result of it, it's just even more. So
Hmm.
it's really good. And I'm excited that you're in the position you are, because with your years of experience and your heart for helping people, I feel like you are the perfect director for that, for it, and I don't know how you, between having to homeschool kids during COVID, and farm and snow, and and that it's you really have your plate full, needless to say. So
Yeah.
anyway, good job. Well, one of the things I always like to ask is a piece of advice, something that I mean, obviously we've just learned about water and ranunculus, but as a farmer, maybe it's a piece of advice someone gave you, or it's a piece of advice that you'd like to give other people. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, I kind of like had to think about this, and um, just having things on hand, which I really learned this past September, because one day in September last year, we were looking at the weather like we always do, and I was trying to like deny that it wasn't going to happen, but we looked like we were going to have a frost in mid-September, which is 3 weeks early for us.
Wow.
Canadian Thanksgiving is early October, and I was like, I can't risk losing things before Thanksgiving because that's one of our big days. We sold like 200 mixed bouquets to the one grocery store in town. So I had to think quick and figure out what to do because this frost was coming. And I bought like enough row cover to cover, I think, 2 acres.
So when you say
um,
row cover, I would just in case people
so
don't
yeah,
know, what is row cover?
the like floating row cover or like the agribon, like the protector, like the white fabric that protects the plants from the frost.
Okay.
So we bought this one roll that was like 50 by 500, so like this humongous roll. And we contacted one of the other garden centers in town, and I said, can I borrow whatever row cover you have? So we covered all the dahlias that we could. We covered the zinnias, we covered the celosia, we covered the marigolds, everything that we possibly could, because we did get a frost that night, and it was anything that wasn't covered was crispy. So I just was like, uh, yeah, I was so glad that I had that and was able to get that um, available to me to protect everything, because otherwise we would have lost everything before Thanksgiving. So I think just having things on hand and having the network of people you can call and talk to and ask, like I just called the garden center and I said, can I borrow whatever row cover you had? They said, yep, we have it in bags, come and pick it up. So that saved our end of the season, because at that point the dahlias had been really slow, we hadn't picked very many, and I would have lost them all and really not made much money at all in dahlias. Anything that did get frosted we cut off, and about 10 days later they were all blooming again and okay. So we saved, and Thanksgiving was like ridiculous number of flowers, it was awesome. And we probably got another 4 weeks of growing out of just having that fabric on hand. So now if we get a late frost and comes after our peonies, we'll have enough fabric to cover all the peonies as well. So just having that, the tip of being ready, and being ready that things can happen, like down in the States, you can get snow down in Texas, and it can really throw you a curveball.
Yeah, crazy. Well, I'm curious when you are covering, flowers that are already up, for example, like in the fall for a late for an early frost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times the flowers are what are so high up. So
Yeah.
did you have hoops or did you have something so that they didn't sit right on top of your flowers? Or did at this
Yeah.
point you're just in panic mode and you just get it covered and you're going to lose a few because they're touching the fabric and then you just,
Yeah.
how did that work?
Yeah, all of the dahlias we stake. So they all had wooden stakes there, but they
Okay.
were up higher than the wooden stakes. So then what we use is our like our caterpillar and low tunnel hoops that we make. We use a style that Joe Schmidt, who's big in the association,
Yeah.
has made this like Gothic style out of a electrical conduit. So it works really awesome. And we just went through and put them as much as we could down the row to keep them up off the flowers. And we did lose some that were touching the fabric and frosted under that, but the majority were okay at that point. And we did lose a few zinnias that were touching the cloth. But it's also that cloth is like, it was windy, a little bit windy. So like having to keep that fabric down, having a piece that's like 50 by 130 feet long, like a big parachute.
Exactly. Yeah, and people don't realize that sometimes that, and then when these cold fronts come through, it's sometimes nothing but wind.
Yeah.
That's a great point. How did you weigh it down?
Just with a shovel, and we took clumps of dirt and put it along the way. Dad and Mark and I were out there with the van lights running so that we could see, because it was dark. And the next morning when I woke up, it was really eerie to see like this floating white all along, like the whole field was like this white floating fabric. It was pretty crazy.
Now, did you take it off that same day or did you like because it was really cold, did it have to stay on longer than a day?
No, we took it off fairly soon because we didn't want to get too hot underneath there again. And it was like this weird freak frost. Like it just went below zero. I think it got down to like R-2 or something like that, which is, I don't, I think I'm not good at converting. I think it's like 16 or something like that. I don't know, frozen. So then the next day it was, I think, got down to about 1, so maybe 19 or something like that. So we did cover it again the next night. We pulled it back during the day and then pulled it back over at night. So it was a huge like undertaking to do, but we needed to do it to save them.
That's great. And then and so if it wasn't under that cover, it was toast for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We would
Wow.
have been pretty much like done September 19th or something like that, which normally would go until at least October 12th or 15th or something like that.
Sure. Why don't one question I had when you were telling me the story is I feel like obviously you saved your crop. You also had product to sell for your holiday, traffic. Did you recoup the cost of the fabric that year? Or does it take a more than one season to really do
I
that?
would say with that one, we recouped the cost for sure. I think the roll was like $500 or $600.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and like at that point, we hadn't made very much on the dahlias because it'd been so hot and dry all summer. They like everybody had a really late dahlia going. But then once that cool and that September and October came on, then they were just pumping out of there. I was picking them by the van full.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I know sometimes I think people hesitate to do things like that because they're afraid of the cost or what exactly is that going to look like.
Hmm.
But in your situation, especially saving a holiday and all those sales, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So good.
And we
That's
have
awesome.
big totes that they're saved. We have them all folded and in big totes now, so that when when there's going to be a late frost, then we can pull them out again. Like in the springtime, we'll have enough to cover everywhere.
So, any tips for dealing with snow? I mean, a lot of our country is dealing with snow right now. I think that this is kind of a big deal because some of them it's for the very first time. I
Yeah,
know you mentioned that you had a couple high tunnels that collapsed at one point. What's
yeah.
the best way of dealing with that issue?
For us, we're out there, we're watching how much it's shedding off. Like if it's shedding off the greenhouse and falling off, then it's okay. But if it's sitting on there, then we go out there with big long handled brooms and things like that, pulling it off of the tunnel so that it's not sitting on there. I mean, the one when they collapsed, it was in the middle of the night. I mean, we didn't know that it was coming down that hard and going that much. But you sure learn after it happens once to not let it happen again. Mom and dad have one big greenhouse that's like a connect, like a gutter connect one, so it's like connected throughout. So that one in the fall it gets big wooden props underneath the gutter to hold up that extra weight because it will have snow come in between the gutters and it will build up there if it doesn't melt right away.
Right.
So dad has often put like a roof, they have like these roof heater cable things that he'll put down the gutter to heat to make that snow melt to go out of there. Um, yeah, you just have to get it off of there as quickly and as much as possible. Um, we usually we either do from the outside or the inside. We will take a big like broom and hit on the inside of the greenhouse. But I didn't even think of it, but a friend of mine posted and said to be careful with that because she knows someone that was in a greenhouse and it collapsed when she was in there doing that. So you have to really be careful. I never thought of it collapsing while you're in there getting the snow off. Then she could have been trapped. Luckily, she wasn't. So I'll think twice about doing it from the inside, maybe for the future.
Right. I mean, unless it's just a little tiny bit on the very tip that you couldn't reach with the broom on the outside, maybe. But
Yeah,
no, I was wondering about the gutter when you said that because I'm like, gosh, there's got to be a way to heat that so that way, because it will just build and build and build and build, and that can get really heavy
yeah,
fast because you're getting that slide off from two houses, from two
hmm,
roofs, and all into that one area. So that's really smart. That's a good little tip there.
yeah.
As far as I know, I've heard some comments, and people are getting questions. I think about snow with things that are planted outside. and sometimes they use like frost cloth,
Mhm.
the row cover to cover some of the cool weather annuals, cold
Mhm.
hardy annuals, and then the snow gets on top of that.
That's
Uh,
actually like an insulator. That's actually a good thing, like to have a good snow cover rather than it just being really cold with no snow. So if like I've seen people down in the States too posting and worrying about their cool annuals and that kind of stuff, but they're probably okay with that snow insulation on there. We have a few beds that we call like our cool flower area, and we'll cover those over with the tunnels and still get the snow load, and that's fine on them. Like they're okay. The snow actually insulates. We did do an experiment. We tried some cool flowers out in the field. So we had them some bells and some nigella, and that was a really good catch in the fall. So we're hoping that the snow cover and a little bit, like we did cover them with a bit of straw and that kind of stuff, we're hoping that that snow and the straw will help insulate to keep them. So hopefully.
well, I was just wondering because I'm like, is it with the snow hitting those low tunnels? Sometimes I feel like that can bend things up a little bit depending on how heavy that snow is. Is it better almost if you've got a good snow coming to remove that frost cloth or that row cover off the low tunnels and just let the snow do the work, or is it better to just have both?
I think it
What do you think?
depends what stage they're at too. Like that's what I really have to be careful is how green they are and how much they're growing. So if it was like ranunculus or anemones or whatever and there's buds on them, that's not good. Same with like tulips. If there's buds and they're flowering, then that's really, you're not going to be able to help them too much anyways. But if they're still like small and green and just like small plants, then I think the snow, either the snow on them or the snow on the tunnel would be okay. It's more once they get to the flowering stage that you've really, like either in a greenhouse or in your normal environment, you've got them growing and they're blooming. They don't want to get snow on them no matter what. And I don't think you can really help that. Like the probably a lot of the growers in Texas, if they had them outside, like they, I think they're probably going to lose this flush of them, but I don't think you're going to lose it all. So don't like rip them
Mm.
out and think that they're not going to come back. Like just give them some time to recover. Like I give the dahlias some time to recover after being frostbitten. Then they came back and bloomed again. Because the flowers, plants, we have to remember plants want to grow. Like they like they're that's what they're trying to do. I mean, it's not, and thinking too, like this has happened before in the world's history lifetime. Like, I mean, this isn't just a 2021, 2020, let's gang up on everybody kind of thing. Like, this has happened before and the world has survived.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Perspective at that point, and realizing this isn't, we're not the first ones to have to deal with this. So
Mhm.
that's really great, really powerful. Well, Janice, thank you so much for your time, and just it's been fun to record this episode with you. I know we've chatted briefly a few times in the past, and I just really I hope that this encourages more flower farmers out there to grow some exciting things and to extend their season. And thank you so much for being on the Flower Podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having the Flower Podcast. I love listening.